Kenny, great to have you on the show, mate. First question we love to ask is, how do you define culture?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Firstly, Ben. Culture, I think a good culture is the environment you create to maximize the potential of the group. Um, I think you do that by living the values that you've created. And I think you live them first from the top down, from the people on the top modeling them. And I think like there's a couple of key ingredients to make any culture successful, because I think a key thing about cultures is you want them to be unique, but you've got to have within them, you've got to have connectedness or belonging for the people involved. And then I think you've got to have a sense of self-autonomy, whereas the players, if we're talking about that, or the people, if you're in a business, they feel like they've got a voice, they feel like they can be heard, and they also feel like they can get better. And I think when you've got all those things put together, you've got a good culture. And like I think about culture sometimes where you can feel it when you go in. I've loved going in for like professional development and going into different environments, and you can go in there and you feel that culture. And strong ones certainly, you certainly leave thinking, yeah, they've got a good culture in place.
What does that feel like, mate? Like, how do you feel that when you're going?
You just see the shared behaviors. You see how people welcome you. You see how people speak to each other. You hear the language that's used between people, um, and also you can see cultures which possibly are underperforming or for whatever reason, and you can see that then as well, where maybe there's less eye contact, there's less physical contact, there's less communication, there's less laughter. It can be a multitude of things, but yeah, I think it's one of the things I've always enjoyed doing when I go into environments, is getting a feel for it.
It's actually interesting you comment on the welcome you get when you come into someone's environment, and you just said then in good environments people feel like they have a voice, and I'm just thinking just then, like, the way people welcome you into environments, them being proud of their environment and having a voice around it by someone's new in having a voice.
Mm.
That was interesting.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Like I remember, like the Storm, people love go to visit them, and that's the kind of place where you can just be watching training, and you're just some token guy on the sideline. But every single player I remember came up and said hi and introduced themselves and seemed generally interested in what was happening and what you do, and then they jumped on the field and switched on really quick, and then had a really hard training session. And you just got that feeling that they welcomed you in, and I've seen that in a few different environments like that. And it's not to say that because I listened to Ben Darwin's with him on with you a few weeks ago, or a few podcasts ago, and I was talking about cohesion, the importance of that. And I certainly am a big believer in that in terms of the importance of cohesion. And so culture may not be everything, but it's certainly a really important cog to maximizing what you have and keeping your group together for as long as possible, and having a place that people enjoy coming to work.
Absolutely, mate. Couldn't agree more. Well, mate, when we're just talking about the welcoming here, so currently you are the attack coach for Argentina, and you've been in there since last year, and you're just fresh off. This week marks a pretty historic moment where you've just beaten the Lions. But let's, if we can, just go back to, mate, how were you welcomed in as a New Zealander going into the Argentinian environment? How were you welcomed into that culture?
Yeah, well, firstly, I was welcomed in by the staff and the head coach, Felipe Contampone, originally. And yeah, I certainly felt a part of the team very quickly. And I certainly felt like I had autonomy in what I was doing. And that, Felipe trusted in what I was doing pretty quickly. And in terms of the playing group, yeah, like it's a really unique environment we have here. It's a really cool culture, and I absolutely love it. And I think I am the token foreigner um, in the group, but I just got the sensation the guys loved it and they were wanting that. They were wanting a little bit of a different point of view. They were interested in what I could bring. And at the same time appreciated that I was I did my very best to understand where they came from and how they play and what the DNA of this team is first. So yeah, I certainly felt welcome.
Yeah. How did you connect with? Obviously, it's a very different culture. How did you sort of integrate yourself into it and get a bit of buy-in and trust from the outset? Any tips on what you did?
Um, well, firstly, just trying to understand exactly how the team wanted to, like for Felipe, how we wanted to play, um, how we were day to day, like what our values were, what made us us as a group. And then from there, it was all about just talking to people and connecting with people as much as possible and um, understanding who they were as people, and then basically going from there.
Nice, mate. And how's the language side of things?
Yeah, it's pretty it's pretty hard. Um, I've like it half the team plays in France and speaks French, and so do a lot of the coaches. So fortunately, because I can speak French, I can get to them that way. But the Argentinians are good at English, so and they're used to having English speaking coaches like Michael Checker's been here and David Kidwell, and there's been a history of Kiwi coaches right past, even Graham Henry's been here. So it's a normal thing for them to be
Mm.
coached in English, which is important for them to have that. So it's getting better in my Spanish, but slowly. I mean, they speak pretty fast. I did break out more than usual last week because we'd had the off season. I broke out as much as I could, which gave the boys a bit of entertainment
Ha.
at the same time. So yeah, it's a work in progress.
Well, mate, the fact that you're prepared to do that in a public setting is a good testament to yourself and trying to create that connection by making that effort, right?
Yeah, and then that's what I learned when I was in France is you've got to show that you're making the effort. And it's not just that, it's when you do learn the language, it's when you get to know people on a deeper level. And, you can understand where they come from and the culture. Um, you can really, yeah, just delve deeper into what's going on.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, that's certainly one of my work-ons outside of the footy field at the moment.
Yeah, well, mate, I reckon that's a great phrase. You learn the language and you get to know people at a deeper level. I reckon that even applies to English, mate. The more you can learn to speak and communicate with, even in your native tongue with people, you actually do get to know people at a deeper level, and that flows through.
Mhm.
Now, mate, I would love to, before we sort of dissect around what you did to beat the Lions, mate, I'd love to go into a little bit of your background, mate. So you're at Lyon for 8 years coaching. Previously, you're a player. You learned the language. You went through all of the coaching sort of steps. You were backs and skills. Then you flicked to attack, and then you flicked to defence, and then you became head role. So you sort of coached all the way up to running that team, and the team did very well. How was that experience for you, mate, in your coaching journey to go through everything, like the attack, the backs and skills, the head coaching? How did that shape you as a coach?
Yeah, well, you know, that was an amazing time I had in France. I loved Lyon. I loved the club. I loved the city. I got, I remember actually getting the opportunity because we were in second division at the time and we were about sure to go up to top 14. And the head coach, Pierre, we only had two coaches at the time, and I knew Pierre was interviewing coaches for the top 14 season. And I had just been told by a surgeon that my knee was headed and that I could probably squeeze out a few more seasons, but I'd be struggling when I'm over 40. And I thought, oh, well, I'd rather be able to chase my kids around in my 40s than hurt me. And so I'd effectively been retired, even though I was halfway through the season. And so Pierre said to me, "Oh, look, if you're keen, you can start helping out with trainings on a trial basis, and I'll keep interviewing coaches. And if I see anything there, maybe there could be an opportunity for you. And so that's how it happened. I actually flew home. I had a bit of time off over Christmas after my operation, and spent a bit of time with Tony Brown and Jamie at the Highlanders, and tailed them for a bit. And I came back with a few extra ideas, and I'd always really, really wanted to coach. Like, I think teaching's a bit inside me. I love pedagogy. My brother's a teacher. So I'd had ideas about doing it. And then, yeah, I got the opportunity at the end of that season, and moved straight in with Lyon. And yeah, it was great because getting to coach all parts of the game just helps so much in understanding what the players see and what other coaches are going through, and also how to communicate with other coaches. And so that was fantastic. I mean, French rugby is just it's a madhouse. Like it's amazing. It's never dull. But you certainly learn different things. I really, learned to appreciate that there's different ways to play the game.
Mm.
Um, Different ways to train, different ways to structure a week. Um, like I think as a Kiwi coming over, I probably at the start thought, oh, the Kiwi way is the way, or the best way. But certainly, working with different coaches, seeing different ways of playing in the competitions, and, just it really helped me understand that, yeah, that's the great thing about sport and about rugby is there's so many ways to do it.
Yeah. And what about the cultural aspect of both France, say New Zealand, and even Argentina now? Like, any real big differences in the way you do things across those three we have coached?
Well, I think so. Like with professional rugby, the players and their demands are similar. Um, Off field, slightly different. I think, like when I first went to France, I remember I had a group of backs, and some of them were older than me, and like we had guys like Fred Michalak in the group, or really experienced, legends of the game. And
Mm.
I started using a lot more questioning in the way that I run meetings and the way that I coach. And I remember at the start not getting too much back. And I remember talking to some of the guys about it, some of the French guys, and I'd said, why aren't I getting too much back? And, they said, well, some of the ways in France, sometimes if you're kind of getting through your days at school and you're not answering questions from the teacher, it's kind of a good thing. So it's not about putting your hand up, and it's like a totally different cultural way. And I think that when we were going, this was like 2015, 2016 at the time, there was a change in the way coaches were doing it, with the amount of questioning they were using, the amount of player input. But that wasn't something that was part of their culture and part of their way of doing things, which certainly took time to develop within the group.
And how did you do that? Like, so questioning is becoming a big part of modern coaching, particularly in this sport. How did you get that coming back at you? How did you get people actually answering questions? Was it a slow burn?
Yeah, it was, but it was also like I'd use a bit of scaffolding in, so I'd speak to players beforehand. I think I got better as a coach as well, because I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding around questioning, and if you just fire a question out there, you're doing it right. Whereas really effective questioning is different to that. Like, so I would speak to players beforehand about what I was going to speak about. I was possibly going to ask them about certain things, to have a think about that, um, to signal what I was going to be questioning about to the group first, showing them clips and help them grow in their understanding, and then how to respond, as well as me just firing kind of cold calling out there all the time.
So is that kind of a tactic to almost give primer questions before the question? And what was the response to that? Did they appreciate that and got them thinking?
Yeah, definitely. Like, it takes time to grow within a group, and a lot of professional rugby players now, or a lot of levels, are used to it, and so you'll get that buy-in quicker. But certainly priming first, and then once they feel like that's part of that cultural bit where people feel like they have the voice. That's an example of giving them that voice, where they feel like they can be heard, and they're creating how you want to play with you.
It's also, isn't it, like a confidence piece, say, for that person to know the question, they're more comfortable to say it because they've had time to think about what a good answer is. And probably the effect of that too for the group is the whole group goes, oh, wow, Timmy over there just spoke up and answered that question. How good. Then it gives almost a platform for the next person to pull out. Sort of like a compounding snowball effect, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think you can help them, as a coach as well by the way you respond. And sometimes you do ask questions and guys are possibly off target in what you're looking for in an answer, but you can you can help them by the way you respond and to let other people maybe grow on that answer. Or if you shoot guys down pretty quickly, you can create that kind of environment where no one wants to get it wrong. So yeah, and it depends a lot as well on the people you're asking. Like I remember one time I had Josh Tuisova in my group, and there was only his first. He just joined us, and he's the most awesome, humble human being you've ever come across. And yeah, I remember my first ever meeting. I just shot him a cold question straight away, and he just kind of stared back at me, and I thought, oh hell, like I've put him in an uncomfortable situation here. So yeah, it's about certainly knowing your people and then knowing your group and then setting them up so that they can, you can help them develop themselves.
Yeah, setting them up for success, isn't it? In what you achieve. How do you respond, mate, when someone says something like that is completely the opposite of what you want to hear? Have you got a couple of go-to responses that you use to just not?
Well, I guess you could just be like, oh, well, that could be an option we could take, but we probably wouldn't take in this reason. Or has anyone else got any other ideas about what we could do in the situation?
Yep.
Something like that, maybe where you can, yeah, without just straight up saying, nah. I mean, it depends on the person and maybe they can take it and depends on the situation, but I think you got to try and grow the group's confidence to be speaking up.
Yeah, love it, mate. And so, mate, you did that. You did 8 years coaching there. Obviously, that's a great experience to coach in a foreign language. You're now fluent in French. The family's all raised there, and then you made the shift back to hometown. The Highlanders coached there, and then pretty much straight away you just got plucked into international coaching with Argentina. Obviously, that speaks volumes in itself about yourself as a coach. But, mate, how was that? Is that always been a dream of yours to get to that international stage?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, I was manifesting that pretty hard throughout my, when I was coaching. I didn't know what it would look like or when, or like we came home, we'd had a fantastic time in France. We loved Lyon, but we felt like we were ready for a change, especially for the family, for my children. We wanted them to be Kiwi kids. We wanted them to rock around on bare feet, and the time was right to change. And I had an opportunity with the Highlanders, which is, that was my team back home, and so I was so thankful to get that and come home and have a crack at coaching in Super Rugby as well, because I really did want to keep learning. I wanted to coach with Kiwis and being in those environments. So yeah, did that and loved it. Loved being back with the Highlanders, and I did learn a lot. It's a really key thing for me. I want to feel like I'm getting stretched. I want to feel like I'm a little bit uncomfortable. And so moving out of that French environment where I'd done a bit of everything and been there a long time, that was ideal for me. And then, yeah, near the end of that season, I just got a call absolutely out of the blue from Felipe asking if I'd be keen to get involved with Argentina. And so, yeah, that was a bit of a shock. And then it was about working through, is it possible, family wise, is it possible, can I leave the Highlanders and join them? And so there's a fair bit of working through that. But yeah, like firstly, like with, the Highlanders and New Zealand Rugby were awesome with it. And then my wife, Bex, who's a legend, once we'd figured out how long I was going to be away and how it was going to work, then yeah, we went at it, and yeah.
What do you reckon it is, mate? Like, for coaches listening to this, obviously there probably not many are at your level, but like at any level, getting that break. What do you reckon it is that, apart from your sort of skill as a coach, is there anything else which helps people get breaks? You reckon, or like I heard a phrase that people leave cheerleaders behind everywhere they go. What do you reckon led Contaponi to seek you, find you, seek you out, and make the call?
Yeah, it had been, without going into too much detail, but I guess there had been a bit of a connection, word of mouth through coaches who I'd coached with, who he knew. He was looking for a coach, a coach who could do certain things, and then it was. I guess it's when you ever do get a chance, it's about the job that you do, the how you make people feel, and how you help people, and how you work, and I think that's the ultimate thing. I mean, there is a traditional way of going about things in terms of having a CV and doing that, but there's also a lot of it through word of mouth and through networks. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a small community at the end of the day, isn't it? The rugby scene.
Mm.
Yeah, righto, mate. And now you got that role, Argentina, and you're absolutely smashing it. Like I think last year for Argentina, there were some of the best results they've had in the championship. And you said something after sort of the season. It's just your focus was always just little steps, like every week, every day, just getting better and better, rather than getting too carried away. But the growth of the Argentinian rugby team presently has just been phenomenal, right? Have you got any thoughts on how that's growing and why that's growing so fast?
Um, ho- Honestly, like Felipe is amazing. So as a head coach, what he's done is he's instilled a kind of culture where there's certain values that we live out every day. He models them as a leader, and that's really helped this group. The team itself is unique in that for these players, the vast majority of them play in Europe. And so when you think about, say, Kiwis or Aussies, or maybe different for South Africans, but like if you're playing in Super Rugby, you're part of a Kiwi culture, whether you're in the Chiefs or the Highlanders, or if you're Aussie in the Waratahs, whereas all of these players are overseas. So they're playing in Toulouse, or they're in Benetton, or they're in Connacht. And this is their chance to be truly Argentinian. And that's what makes us so cool. And so you feel that with them. Like they're extremely proud people, as all countries are. But they don't get the chance to be, that I guess Argentinian as much in the year as it's now for the Pumas. And so for us, we really doubled down on that, on who we are and what the DNA is and what it means to be playing for the Pumas. And that's where Felipe has set it up so well. That's in terms of the off-field stuff and how we behave, and on field as to how we play. And so there's a couple of the other coaches as well are fantastic. Andreas Bordoy, who does the forwards, and Juan Martin Fernandez Lobbe. They're great guys. They're like great people. And it's the same with all the staff. So I think that's a big part of the growth that we're seeing.
Yeah. When you say double down on the DNA, what is, do you reckon, the DNA of the Argentinian culture?
Well, it's pretty fierce in the contact. When you think about how they chop tackle, they're really proud of that. There's an element, I think, which of Argentinian which have been strong scrummages, and there's a set piece part of it, which we're working on, we're building, and there's the innate Latin flair with which Argentinians have, and that is just awesome to coach. And when I say coach, it's almost about without kind of getting the wording wrong, but under coaching, in that you want to simplify everything to allow them to play free,
Yes.
and allow them to see space and remove fear. And that's how I see coaching. And that's a part of what we're trying to do
Yeah, I
with the
actually
group.
took a quote from you on that, which said you were talking about the team. You're saying, I want them to be brave, want them to be free, and I don't want to restrict the way they play. I thought it was a lovely phrase you said a little while ago. And how do you balance that out with the sort of the detail and the focus, particularly on attack, on some of that subtlety?
Yeah, well, again, like, although we're just four coaches and Felipe's head coach and does the D, but he's also got a big attack brain. And that was another reason why I wanted to join this team. I knew I could be learning a lot from him. And so he's very good in terms of structured stuff. And so I will bounce ideas off him. We talk about attack and D a lot. And so keeping that kind of detail in how we attack, whether that be in the structured side of the attack, we can get that, and I can get that as well from tapping into his knowledge. And then it's about, yeah, just making sure that the guys are like, we basically are really big principles based coaches. And so how we coach is first principles first, and then we give the players a bit of a framework, and within that they can make decisions. And so yeah, there's time to give them detail, and they do like that. But it's also about not overloading them, and making sure that when they arrive on the Saturday, they're super clear in how they want to play, but they're free, and they're ready to throw caution to the wind.
What would be some examples of like principles for a principles-based coach?
Well, it might be, I don't know, like running hard into space.
Right. So if that's your principle, you just everything derives from that.
Yeah. And then from there you can solve whatever, without getting too bogged down in details or, yeah, like it's most important, I think, to understand how you want to play through that, and then that can help set you up for how you design your sessions and how you review your games, and how you review your trainings, and how you give individual feedback. You can always just resort back to your principles of play.
I love it, mate. And another thing you actually said when you're talking about sort of principles, when you got this role, I got a line from you that you said you're going over there to grow great people as well as the way we play. And I thought that was a lovely balance between, even at international level, there's still that focus on the people side of stuff. And is it even more so at international level? You're trying to grow people, or is it all about the game?
No, it's certainly not all about the game. I mean, you got to understand the business we're in, and that we're representing, Argentina, and we're trying to win Test match rugby,
Yeah.
and get as high in the rankings as we can. But you do that through growing people as well, and so it's a mix. For me, I'm all about, like, I'll connect before I'll correct, and that's where it all starts. That's the same how I structure my week, how I'll structure my trainings, how I'll structure my videos, anything. I'll always go back to that. And through your connection, you're growing people, and through your coaching, you're growing people. I guess you can coach situations. You can coach moments in the game. You can coach off the ball behavior, and it's all about kind of like growing people, as individuals, and you'll get those kind of habits you want to see through doing that.
Yeah, I love that phrase, mate. Connect before you correct. Does that phrase sort of entice you? Like, if you're better connected with someone, your correction points will land better when you do them. Is that the kind of principle behind that?
Yeah, I think it always does. It also can help shape the correction you're going to make as well, if you do need to make a correction, because you can see things on the field and players might make decisions, and you might have a correction for them if that's the case. But sometimes you need to understand first what they were seeing, or what they were feeling, or what they were hearing. Sometimes when you're seeing behaviors in a gym or in a training session, or before training or after training, and it might not align with what you're after, or you want to have a talk to them about it. But more often than not, there's deeper reasoning behind it. And so you got to connect first. You got to understand where they're at. Maybe things are happening off field, or within the group, or outside the group, and you get that first, and then that can certainly help shape what that next kind of conversation is.
Yeah. Mate, absolutely. It's sort of interesting. We were talking about off air just before about the parenting journey, and I think that mirrors coaching a lot, right? And with a parent, you kind of know the background that your kids are going through, and you can put a bit of emotion and empathy in that. But the same principles apply to anyone in your teams too, right?
Mm. Yeah, that's right.
And now, Kenny, you've just come off. This is we're filming. We're recording this on the weekend. You just had probably one of the most historic wins in Argentinian history. Maybe you beat the British and Irish Lions in Dublin. And I'd just like to dive into that fact, mate. How did you approach that game from a cultural perspective? You went to Dublin, which is arguably the home of British and Irish Lions, and it was a sea of red. And you went in there and you played a fantastic game of rugby, got like high pressure, and you had a great performance. How did you approach it as a coaching staff around building that game up from a cultural perspective? How did you approach it?
Um, Everything was about. So we've obviously just come off the off season, the international off season for us, and all the players have been scattered all over the world.
Yep.
And how we shaped the week in terms of mindset was just refinding our DNA as quickly as possible. So who we are, how we play, our principles, and how that looks. So it started the week by firstly, we started with our culture. That was the first thing we did. We only got the team together on the Sunday night, and that can happen in international footy. We only have a week to prepare for a game. And so we got the guys together on the Sunday night and we played on the Friday. So we had a couple of days to get everything in place to get a performance in. But yeah, our first few hours were all about culture.
So
And that was just reestablishing I guess the values of who we are and the behaviors and then going back to, what we wanted to see on the field, which was the Pumas DNA. And it was all about that all week.
driving that sort of alignment that we're all doing the same thing.
Yes, so it was about, definitely who we are, what that looks like on the field, and there was underlying, I guess, there was conversations, especially from the leaders, about just how grateful we are and fortunate we were to have a chance to play against the Lions, and that for Argentina that had happened 20 years ago. It's a generation, it's a once in a generation chance, and it's a big stage, the Lions, and World Rugby really does look, and we just knew it was what an awesome opportunity to showcase what Argentina rugby is about, and kind of where this team is at the moment as well. So it was exciting. It was exciting for the week because the guys they knew the occasion, but we're just super excited about putting Pumas rugby on the stage.
So you said like you came together with just a week's notice or just a week together. Did you do anything to, like, obviously people coming from everywhere all over France and different places. How did you bring people together quickly? Did you do anything different or abnormal or uniquely to bring them together?
No, not really. I mean, every week we have a asado as a team, and like a Argentinian barbecue. So that, which is hugely important, and it's one of the highlights of the week because, man, there's some quality red meat. It's cooked by the front rowers, and oh god, they put in some good time. And yeah, you can't get behind the asado and cook. You got to be a front rower. But yeah, so like there's that, that's just part of what we do every week.
Do you start on a Monday with the barbecue? Is that how it rolls? Like,
no, we have the Monday. The barbecue after our biggest training day.
Yeah.
For the players' day off. But no, we kind of had a reasonably standard week. We also wanted to prepare the guys as best we could, like a normal test week, even though it wasn't an official test match. The guys who debuted, because we did have a decent amount of guys straight out of the South American, the new Super Rugby South America's competition.
Yep.
So there was an element we play in our dinner. They had to learn the calls. like we were teaching them the name of like what a pot is off 9, like there was levels of integration that we had to get everyone's heads around to be able to play on the Friday. But it wasn't too dissimilar to a normal test week. There
Yeah.
was just a massive emphasis on us.
Do you worry about when, like you talked earlier about not overloading players? Is that a real risk when you've just got a week, a big game, you want to chuck in a whole lot of stuff? Do you actually have to stop sometimes and go, look, let's not put too much in here because otherwise we'll be thinking too much in the game and we just want to be our instinctive best?
Yeah, I guess you got to understand, I guess, what's going to give you your biggest bang for your buck and what you spend time on during the week to prepare them to perform. And yeah, certainly the old amount you're giving them, the old cognitive load's important. But at the same time, I think sometimes we can underestimate what they can take in, and if you do it at the right times and allow them to practice it and allow them to process it, then yeah, you don't want to be overloading too much information later in the week. But there was a little bit to get in at the start.
Yeah, that's right. And was there any pressure out there? Did anyone have feeling? I know there's a lot of seasoned campaigners in there, but was there any inkling of pressure in the big stage of this particular game as opposed to normal test matches?
I just felt it was similar. It was similar to a normal test match for us. That was which yes, there's pressure, which is that good kind of pressure which you want, which you want to embrace. And yeah, it felt normal. It was an amazing occasion. Like the crowd was just humming, and the Lions and Lion in the UK is a rare thing. And I think it's actually special because their last tour was the COVID tour, in South Africa. And this was the first time there'd been a crowd, really, a proper full crowd for a Lions game since 2017. So it certainly made for an extra special occasion.
Yeah, I bet, mate. And were you happy with the performance on field? If you're going back to your coaching head, did it tick all the boxes, or do you still have a few critiques that you want to remedy?
Oh, I'm real happy with, because I think what you did see was Pumas rugby in terms of the defence and some of those tries we scored.
Awesome.
And in the same sense, the Lions weren't far off, and they had a couple of weeks together, but they're bringing together a whole new set of calls and systems, and they got a couple of tries disallowed. They certainly broke the line a lot and had opportunities, which they'll finish in the few weeks. They'll be there or thereabouts. They're well coached and they got a great team. So we're realistic around that. But no, I mean, sometimes you've got to sit back and sometimes in rugby you can move on pretty fast and move to the next thing quite quickly. But I think it's important that you did certainly have a couple of moments thinking, yeah, that's cool. I'm super proud of what the team did that day.
That's awesome, mate. And did the passion, the DNA of the passion from Argentina flow into the rest of the evening?
Yeah, I mean, music's a big part of who we are, and there was certainly some good singing going on in the changing rooms, a few conga lines, and but I mean, the guys are pretty good there in that sense. I do find this group, like it's not something I ever have to worry about or think about as a coach in terms of maybe overdoing it in terms of the celebrations. They certainly enjoy it, but yeah, like it's an interesting kind of feel in that they keep a lid on it.
Do you reckon that's modern rugby has changed in that regard? Like a long time ago, the celebrating side of things was a big part of the reason people played. Do you think that's shifting in modern rugby?
Yeah, I've seen it. I think it depends on your group, eh? I think I've seen some groups that still do it. Probably overall as a generalization, yeah.
Yeah.
And players coming through younger into a more professional systems quicker and have a little bit more understanding of the pros and cons and how it can affect your recovery and your career in general. So yeah, there's been a bit of a change for that.
Yeah, it's certainly I remember a while ago the sort of the court session mentality where you'd all be in a dingy room with a keg of beer in the middle. Those sort of days are And not as prevalent as they once were, right?
Yeah, not as prevalent. Although, don't get me wrong, it's always important to have some good time together like that.
There's always a balance for sure. Yeah, I love it, mate. You have those ones. And now, mate, throughout your experience, your coaching to date, have you had any moments where you might have got a few things sort of wrong culturally, where you've, especially coming from where you've come from, the time in France, the time in New Zealand, the time in Argentina, have you ever had any misses that you've learned from that would be beneficial for other coaches working their way up the ranks to here?
Oh God, I'm sure I've had plenty. Um, I mean, oh yeah, I don't know. Like culturally, you've just got to understand that there's you want to ride the wave of wherever you are rather than fighting the tide. And I think you got to figure out the little ways you can get in, maybe what you have from your rugby upbringing or your culture, which could add value. But you just really got to understand where they're coming from and why they do things. And um, yeah, although I can't, to be fair, I can't think of specifics. Yeah, it's just so important that yeah, you meet teams where they are and players where they are, and you and then from there you go for it rather than coming in thinking, oh, well, I'm going to do it this way. Um, because that's what's so cool. Is there's such different ways of playing.
Such different, isn't it? Every team's different, right?
Yeah, teams are different, competitions are different. I think that's what makes the top 14 so interesting is that there's so many different ways of playing and teams have different styles and certain ways of winning and when it's warmer and then when it's winter and you got to grind it out. So it certainly makes for interesting.
Yeah, I always remember the winter 3 months over in the Premiership in the UK was a very different rugby that was played towards the summer end in the finals. It changed completely.
Mm,
Yeah, it's fascinating.
really.
And where to next for you, mate? Where's like what's the challenge now with this Argentinian team that you're currently in the throes of the international calendar? What's your focus points? Where you taking this team? Any unique ways and where you going?
Oh, well, like we know that we had a good season last year, but the reality is we had some good games followed by some poor games, results wise. And so a big one for us is growing our consistency in like how we prepare every week, which then allows us to have a consistent performance to give us a chance. I think that's something that we're pushing really hard as coaches. And then there's the part with this team of, we're capable of beating anyone our day, but our next step is to really grow depth with the Pumas, and so that's giving opportunities to younger or less experienced international players. You know, coaching them hard and setting them up well, and then giving them opportunity to play for the Pumas, which will then build more depth. That's something that's really important for us. And then I guess it's just about keep being consistent and keep building up Argentina on the world stage because it's always been kind of, well, they've really made strides. Have made strides in the last probably 10 years,
Mm.
been really, really good in World Cups, which is often just through the fact that they've had time to spend, longer time together. But it'll be about being really consistent in between World Cups as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept you talked about giving people to grow depth. You give them a little bit of exposure. How do you manage that at an international level where you clearly you want results, but is that where you give the exposure to the younger guys, or do they have to earn it first, or what's the balance between throwing a young player out there for exposure versus putting the best person on the field?
Yeah, it's a fine line because again, you're in the results business, but if you're really aligned as a staff about what you're doing, and it's certainly not about throwing guys out there if they're not ready. It's making sure that you get them into the environment, they understand how you play, and then you see them performing at training, and you think, okay, it's time to do it, maybe, and surround them with experienced players and with a game plan that suits them. And I mean, for us, it's interesting because all the players play overseas. There's no kind of national union to manage their minutes, which often you get in, say, Super Rugby, or like the Irish might be able to manage the minutes in the URC, whereas our guys will finish and then they're into it. And so it's kind of on us to do that in a way, which is it's actually a good thing. Like, we look at that because we're thinking, well, we will do that, and we're going to do that for this upcoming English series with some of our regular guys, but we're going to give them time so they can recover and rejuvenate, and give them a bit of a preseason, and that then allows us to blood younger guys.
Mm.
So yeah, it's in a way forced on us in a way, but it's also a really positive thing.
No, I love how you shift that, mate. You take what's happening in front of you and just shifting it to make it a really exciting thing and taking ownership and accountability. It's freaking awesome, Kenny. Love it. Now, mate, we've got to. It's been awesome chatting to you, mate. And I'm sort of still buzzing about that game. It was just wonderful to see. But the question I want to finish with, mate, is one that I ask regularly at the finish here, is about what's one belief you have about rugby or culture that you think your peers in the game might disagree with? One belief you have.
Um, I've got I've got a couple.
Oh,
I
hit me
think.
with a couple. If you've got a couple, let's
Oh,
throw them out there.
cultural wise, yeah, I'm not sure whether people would disagree with it or not. I think cultural wise, there's an element of culture that you set up at the start of seasons, and um you co-create, I guess, with the players. That's the best way, and you go about it. But I also think you've got to allow space within that for some things to happen organically. Like, and I think those can be the best parts of your culture, which, yeah, like, leaders, you come up with the values and the vision, but there's also a part of it which I think just happens over time. And some of those things can be a really cool part of your culture, which before you don't even realize. Um, yeah, like I'm just seeing that develop with how we are after games, and how the guys celebrate in the changing rooms and what they do. And I kind of want to take that and then grow it, but it's nothing that's been spoken about, or it's nothing we haven't sat around in groups and done that. It's just happening.
Mm.
I think you can grab that and go with it.
Is there anything
Uh,
specifically there? Like what examples of that might be there?
just something about what we're going to be doing with music.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's actually something recently I've just learned, which has surprised me, but well, this is just for other coaches out there, and this is more about the teaching side of things. But the whole kind of when you're presenting, and how people learn, the whole kind of like learning styles of visual or auditory or kinesthetic things, that's all basically baloney. That it's not actually a thing, that science doesn't back it. And I think it's good because I learned that recently, and it sent me down a different kind of line of learning how do people learn. And yeah, I'd recommend that to coaches, is to start with, to understand that you do want to present ideas and different methods to make it interesting. And so that might be using pictures or visual and then speaking about it, or maybe doing it, but that's not actually, people aren't going to learn better because it's visually or because it's auditory or doing.
Yeah. That's fascinating. You talk about the learning style, all that stuff, because I heard a phrase myself that there's no such thing as learning styles, just teaching styles. And I thought there was a good shift in that around the way you teach. Of course, needs to be varied because people are different. You just inherently should be trying different ways. One way, won't hit everybody. So you got to teach it in different ways. I thought it was interesting. What else did you pick up from that? Made that learning style thing. Where was that quote? Was that a bit of research, or where's that come from?
Yeah, well, I love like Doug Lemov and kind of figuring out how people learn. And I guess it's a little bit forced on me doing it in a different language. And I want to make sure that the point I'm getting across is actually getting across. And so then, like you learn about retrieval and checking for understanding and spacing. Those kind of things are all really key parts of learning. And so I think it more came from me thinking, oh, Jesus, is what I'm actually doing here getting through? And then to understand how do people learn. So yeah, I really enjoy that part of coaching, the pedagogy side of it.
Yeah, I love it, mate. Well, and just in reference to Doug Lemov, I've actually passed him on this podcast previously too, because to give him a listen, because he is absolutely outstanding. And for any coach and leader to read and listen to some of his work is awesome for that pedagogy side of things. And he's outstanding, isn't he?
Love it.
Love it. Righto. Well, Kenny, thank you so much for your time today, mate. I appreciate you've just been on the long haul flight back to Buenos Aires after a fantastic win in the weekend, mate. And I'm wishing you all the best on the English series that's coming up. And no doubt Argentina's in fantastic hands with you at the helm, encouraging that flair and trying to reduce any sort of restriction. So we're getting this type of champagne rugby that Argentina are making a name for themselves with. So what a pleasure, brother.
Thanks very much, Ben. Much appreciated, mate.
Awesome.